Auzu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. On behalf of the HSC Al Bayt, I would like to welcome all of you to this Hajj preparation seminar. Alhamdulillah, last week we had an amazing session by Sheikh Nuru Muhammad on the spiritual aspects of Hajj. I'm sure many of you really liked who listened. We were able to see lots of hearts coming, etc. So inshallah, that was a great preparation for today's session. So inshallah, today's session will focus on the fiqh aspects of Hajj. So we had sent the pre-read of the PowerPoint. So Inayat Bhai has prepared a test for all of you before Akil Karim goes on. How many are ready for the test? Alhamdulillah, at least we have a few. So I know today's material is going to be heavy, probably the most heaviest of the material technical rules about the fiqh aspects of Hajj. But you don't have to worry, okay? Akil Bhai will go through the details, but we will be providing more seminars on the ground in Medina to do the Umrah, and then again in Makkah for the Hajj part of it, right? So all of us are asking you to digest as much as you can today, but don't get worried because it may sound a little bit heavy. Is that good? All right, so today's session, when we say fiqh aspects, we need to make sure that we understand the rules of how to perform the rituals. For example, okay, how many times you have to hit the shaitan? Is it 1 time? Is it 7 times? Is it 5? How many rounds of tawaf we have to do? Is it 1? Is it 5? Is it 7? Which rituals require us to be in wudu, right? So that's something to know. For tawaf, for example, we need wudu. For sa'i, we don't need wudu. So these are the technical rules which today we will cover in detail. So the session today will focus on the Jafri school of thought. But don't worry, we are all one ummah. Sheikh Nuru, who is going to be accompanying us during the Hajj trip, is fully familiar with all school of thoughts, right? And there are so many seminars by Al Bayt, right, which you can listen, etc., if you are of following a different school of thought. But we are all in this for this spiritual journey. We are all one ummah. So most of the rules are very, very similar. There may be some minor differences, but don't worry about the differences. You can ask Sheikh Nuru about the differences or listen to the Al Bayt seminars which are happening now, and of course they'll continue to happen. Is that good? Okay, so the time is 10:15. I've given Akil Bhai 1 hour, so he'll finish by 11:15. We will open up for Q&A for around 15-20 minutes. We'll cover as many Q&A as possible, but again, we will be with you through this journey, so inshallah there'll be a lot of time to answer questions on the ground in Medina before we depart until, inshallah, May 19th. So with a loud salawat, can you welcome Akil Karim, please? So Akil has been doing this seminar for a number of years. He has traveled with Hajj and Umrah for many years as well, so he's very familiar. Unfortunately, he can't join us this year, but inshallah we pray that he'll be with us next year. So with a loud salawat, please welcome Akil, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولله على الناس حج البيت من استطاع إليه سبيلا آمنت بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Recite one salawat for me, please. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, all praise belongs to Him and to Him alone. First and foremost, indeed, a pleasure to be here again this morning. It seems to have become an annual ritual for me to be here. Unfortunately, as Habib Bhai mentioned, I will not be able to join the group this year. I haven't had a chance to go over the last few years, but inshallah, all of you who are blessed with the opportunity are indeed blessed for Hajj has become very difficult these days, especially the opportunity to be able to go for Hajj is a lot more challenging today with the changes in the rules that have taken place. So you are indeed blessed and do take advantage of the opportunity, inshallah. As Habibai mentioned, the slides were sent out. I did see that they were posted yesterday, so hopefully all of you have at least had a chance to skim through them. There's a lot of material to cover. An hour is, if we wanted to spend a lot of time to cover all of this in depth, an hour is not sufficient. So I am not going to go through the details of the slides like we typically would, because you've had the pre-read. So I will skim through and touch upon the key highlights that I want to talk about, and then inshallah we'll open up the floor for questions. Ideally, let's park the questions till the end, if that's okay. Just sort of, otherwise we'll get off on tangents if you don't mind. So first point, again, something that Habibai already mentioned. What I'm about to present is based on the Ja'fari school of thought. There are differences, unquestionably, between the manasik of Hajj and specifics with regards to how the Ja'fari school of faith views some of the rulings versus how our Sunni brothers and sisters view theirs. But even amongst the Ahl Sunnah, there are differences amongst the various schools. So it's difficult to present even the Ahl Sunnah perspective as one alternate perspective, because amongst the Malikis, Shafis, Hanafis, and Hanbalis, there are differences of opinion amongst the various rituals as well. So there is no one, Shia perspective versus Sunni perspective. Even amongst the Ahl Sunnah, there are varying views amongst the various rituals. So the intention today is to present the rulings based on the views of Ayatollah Sistani. For those who perhaps may still be muqallideen of the late Agha Khamenei, his views are not very different from those of Ayatollah Sistani. There's probably just one issue that is worth calling out in Mina, but otherwise, for all intents and purposes, the views are identical. Okay, so we'll start off with one preliminary slide, which is to talk about what makes Hajj wajib or mandatory, obligatory on an individual, right? There are various conditions. If they are fulfilled, it makes Hajj wajib on all of you or on the individual. I'm assuming that all of us who are seated here who are intending to go for Hajj, Hajj has become wajib on you, and therefore you are planning to go on this blessed journey. There are two things I want to call out, particularly with regards to obligations that you may have that you need to fulfill before you embark on this journey. One is khums, and the other are debts that you may owe to others, right? If you have a khums obligation, please make sure that you settle it before you leave, okay? Number two, if you have a debt, I'm not talking about a mortgage. Everybody in this part of the world has mortgages. Mortgages are different because you have a pre-agreed upon payment plan with the lender to satisfy your debt obligation. That is perfectly fine. But if you owe someone else money, right, either settle the debt or make sure that you have the conversation with that individual to say, if you have a payment plan, no problem. But if you owe someone money and you can't pay it off at this point in time, at least have the conversation with them to say, look, I'm about to begin on this journey for Hajj. I know I owe you X. I will settle it upon my return. So just make sure that is sorted out. So the obligations that one has, whether it is the religious obligations like khums or any other obligations as far as huquq al-nas is concerned, it's important that you settle those before you depart on this journey, inshallah. Okay. Hajj is actually of two parts. The first is Umrah Tamattu, and the second is Hajj Tamattu. For those of you who have been for Umrah before, this will be very familiar. Umrah Mufrida and Umrah Tamattu is a subset of Umrah Mufrida. Okay? So if you've been for Umrah before, these 5 rituals that comprise of Umrah Tamattu will be very, very familiar. The wearing of Ihram, the performing of Tawaf, the 2 rakat Salat that follows, Sa'i and Taqsir. And we'll cover each of these in a little bit of detail. And then inshallah, if there are any questions at the end, inshallah, we'll tackle those. Ihram. The wearing of Ihram has 3 parts to it. 3 critical components as far as Ihram itself is concerned. The clothes of Ihram or the garments of Ihram, the niyyah, the intention, and then the recitation of talbiyah. Those are the 3 things for Ihram. But Ihram also must be worn at a designated place. And that designated place is called a miqat, depending on the direction from which you are entering Makkah, right? Will determine which miqat you must wear your ihram at. And there are several, okay? The vast majority of us go to Medina first, and then from Medina we head to Makkah. Whether we're going for Umrah or we're going for Hajj, the traditional path for us is we go to Medina first, we visit the Prophet and the Imam of Baqi, and then we head to Makkah. So for those entering or going towards Makkah from Medina, there is a place called Dhul Hulayfa, where there's a masjid called Masjid al-Shajara, which is the designated miqat from which ihram is worn. Okay. As far as the wearing of ihram is concerned, when we talk about wearing ihram or putting on ihram, the clothes of ihram can be worn anywhere. So most people, before they leave for Masjid al-Shajara, they are already wearing their ihram from the hotel. But that's just putting on the clothes. The actual niyyah that is performed to officially put on the clothes of ihram happens at Masjid al-Shajara. Okay? So 3 critical requirements for ihram. First is the clothes. As far as women are concerned, regular clothes suffice. There are no restrictions other than it cannot be silk, gold, or leather, which, other than silk, avoid silk, but gold, leather, nobody wears anyway for ihram. So for women, it's regular clothes. No distinction from anything else. For men, however, the clothes of ihram consist of 2 pieces of unstitched cloth, right? One is the loin cloth, which is from the navel to the knee, and the other is the shoulder cloth. And those are readily available. I'm not going to talk logistics, but if you have them here, take them, or you can borrow from someone. If not, readily available in Medina. Like every corner in Medina has them, you can buy them. The other thing to remember about ihram is that ihram must be tahir at all times, right? Pure from ritual impurity. Okay? Your ihram will get dirty. It's just the nature of the environment. But dirt is not najasat, right? So make sure that you understand the distinction between tahir from a ritual sense versus just it being dirty. It'll get dirty almost immediately because of just the dust and the environment. Because your clothes of ihram must be tahir at all times, for men, particularly, if you're going with a friend or family member, we generally recommend that amongst 2 of you, you buy 3 sets, right? Because they come in pairs. That way you have 1 extra piece available should your clothes of ihram become najis, right? It's easier to switch it out as opposed to making it free of najasat. But that's an option as well. Okay. This slide is important. I'm going to repeat it, only talk about it once, and then you'll see it repeating again and again, or you've seen the slides, you'll see it repeating again and again. When you do your niyyah for ihram and for every ritual that follows, everyone who goes for Hajj is in one of 3 scenarios. Either it is their first Hajj, their wajib Hajj, in which case the first niyyah is the one that applies to you, right? I've written it in Arabic as well, but we'll ignore the Arabic for a moment. If this is your wajib Hajj, you're going for the very first time, your niyyah is that I am wearing ihram for Umrah Tamattu, for Hajjatul Islam, wajib qurbatan ilallah. Okay? And if it is your wajib hajj, you can only perform it for yourself because it is your wajib hajj. Okay? The second scenario is that you have already completed your first hajj. And this, you're now going for the nth time, right? Second, third, fourth, but you want to perform this hajj for yourself again. In which case, then the second niyyah that is there would be your niyyah, that I am wearing ihram for umrah tamattu', for hajj tamattu' qurbatan ilallah, not hajjatul Islam. Hajjatul Islam is only for your wajib hajj. And then the third scenario only applies if you have completed your wajib hajj, and this you're going again now, and you're now intending to perform this hajj niyabatan on behalf of a list of individuals, right? Marhumin, your parents, grandparents, family members, etc., right? Then that would be your third niyyah, that you are wearing now ihram for umrah tamattu', for hajj tamattu', on behalf of so and so, and you list the names of those individuals, qurbatan ilallah. Notice the three types, right? The first type is important. For those of you who are going for the very first time, and this is your wajib hajj, ignore everything else. Nothing applies to you other than that first format or first type of niyyah. The second and third only apply to those who have been before, have completed their wajib hajj, are now have been blessed with the opportunity to go back again. And you will see this format repeat on every slide. I'll say maybe one more thing here. Just like any other act of worship, there is no requirement to verbally pronounce the niyyah. The niyyah is a state of mind as long as you're consciously aware of what act you're about to embark upon, that is sufficient. Okay, so you don't have to remember to say these words exactly the way they are. As long as you know that you're now putting on ihram and you know what you're about to do. You're putting on your ihram for umrah tamattu', for hajjatul Islam, wajib qurbatan ilallah. It's all in your mind, right? And before every ritual, just have that state of mind that you know exactly what you're about to do. That is sufficient, right? You don't have to verbally pronounce it in any language for that matter. Okay. So we said that there were three things for requirements for ihram. First is the garments, the clothes of ihram. The second is the niyyah. And the third is a phrase called talbiyah, which, as you can see, read on the screen, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik, innal hamda wan ni'mata laka wal mulk, la sharika laka labbaik. And you'll hear everybody chanting this phrase in Masjid al-Shajara. This phrase is like, when you're reciting your salat and you do your niyyah and you recite your first Allahu Akbar, the takbiratul ihram, after which you're now in the state of prayer and several things become haram on you, right? You can't look around, you can't be talking, etc. You're in the middle of prayers. That takbiratul ihram and this talbiyah are like one another. Once the talbiyah is recited, you're now officially in the state of ihram, right? Just as I said earlier, you can put on your clothes of ihram in the hotel, right? But you're not in ihram. Only after you have done your niyyah and you recited your talbiyah, now you are formally in the state of ihram. Now that you're in the state of ihram, there are certain things that become haram on the muhrim, the person who is in the state of ihram, right? And there are 25 things. Again, you will have read some of these on the slides. I'm only going to touch on a few of them that are a little bit unique, but otherwise, please do make sure that you read the slides. There's a lot of material available online, other lectures available online that have more detail. And then, if you have questions even after today, feel free to send them. Inshallah, we'll do our best to answer those as well. Okay, so the first slide has a few, actually has all of them summarized, but I just want to cover a few of them in a little bit more detail. So one of the prohibitions for men is you cannot be wearing any sewn clothes, right? So the only clothes that you wear for ihram are the two pieces of unstitched cloth and nothing else. Now, some people wear a belt, right, for safekeeping of valuables, money, phone, etc., which is fine. But there are a couple of other things to remember as far as the ihram is concerned. One is that no knots are allowed in ihram, right? And there's a technique to wearing the loincloth. And inshallah, the volunteers who will be accompanying the group will show you how to wear the clothes of ihram. Everybody is concerned about the loincloth, and the concern is that, is it going to fall off? The loincloth doesn't fall off, right? It's secured very well with the technique that you will be shown. The part that is flimsy is the shoulder cloth. That's the one that generally tends to flop or flip open, especially when you're praying, when you're ruku and sajda, etc. The loincloth is the least of your worries. But a couple of things to keep in mind. One, no knots permitted on either two pieces. A safety pin is permitted only to hold the shoulder cloth. If you wish to keep the shoulder cloth secured, you can pin it, but you can only use a safety pin on the shoulder cloth, not on the loincloth. And the restriction for women, you can wear regular clothes, but no gloves permitted, right? And no silk clothing, as I mentioned earlier. The other prohibition that's worthy of mention is looking in the mirror for purposes of beautification, meaning that you glance at the mirror just to check yourself out to make sure that everything's in place and everything's looking good. Keep in mind that if you look at, and I'm sure I didn't get a chance to listen to what Sheikh Nuru said last week, but the underlying theme in all of the prohibitions as far as the state of ihram is concerned is that you want to present yourself before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the simplest of forms, right? Without any pomp, without any anything that makes you look good. Because at the end of the day, everyone is equal in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why all of us go with two plain pieces of cloth. It doesn't matter whether you're a billionaire back home or you have just made your way to be able to make it to Makkah. At the end of the day, everybody looks the same, right? And there's power in the simplicity that you present yourself with in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so you'll see this recurring theme in all of these prohibitions, right? Whether it is looking in the mirror for reflective surfaces, or we'll talk about covering feet in a moment, but whether it is about wearing rings, or jewelry, applying perfume, all of these are not permitted in the state of ihram for that one reason. There is no distinction between rich and poor, black and white, when you appear before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Hajj or Umrah, right? In that state, everybody is equal. Okay, covering feet. For men, we're not allowed to cover your feet. So the footwear that you wear generally will be either flip-flops or sandals with a sufficient part of your foot exposed. But socks not permitted for men because you're not allowed to cover your feet. Women, obviously, covering the feet is part of hijab, and therefore you'll be wearing your socks anyway. But for men, you need to keep the upper part of your foot exposed. Use of perfume, we talked about this a moment ago. No perfume permitted while in the state of ihram. Self-beautification, same thing. Any jewelry, for example, that you wear on a regular basis, particularly for ladies, if you wear jewelry all year long, let's say you wear a necklace all year long, or you wear a ring, all the time, then you're not really wearing that necklace or ring for the purposes of beautification, because you wear it all year long. Same thing for men, right? If you wear an aqiq ring all year long, then that's fine, you can wear it. Because the intent of that is not beautification as such, okay? But you will find many who, even though they may wear an aqiq all year long, they will take their aqiq off. They will take their watch off, everything, so that in the state of ihram, they're wearing nothing but just those two pieces of cloth, okay? Removing hair from one's body, again, you can read this. I think it's pretty straightforward and self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go into that. Covering one's head while in the state of ihram, also not permissible for men, right? So, wearing a hat is not permissible for men in the state of ihram. Agha Sistani also covers the ear to be part of the head, and therefore you need to be careful when using the phone not to fully cover your ear while you're in the state of ihram. You can cover a portion of it, and that's perfectly fine. Sheltering in shaded places. So men are not allowed to shelter themselves from the sun or the rain while traveling. So what does this mean? What this means is, and I don't know what the logistics are this year, but in the past, what we would do is we would go to Masjid al-Shajara in the evening, pray our Maghribain Salat, and then leave at night to go to Makkah from Medina. And this was as a result of this restriction, which is you cannot be traveling and using shade unless you have like an open bus or something, which are rare to find these days. But you cannot be traveling, for men, you cannot be traveling with a shade and protecting yourself from the sun or the rain. Right? It doesn't rain very often in that part of the world, so you're generally safe. But because you're traveling at night, you're now also protecting yourself from the sun. So you just need to be careful about traveling. Once you have reached your destination, you can go inside the hotel, you can be in your room in the state of ihram, there's no problem. It's just a restriction of traveling with shade. So you cannot be walking around with an umbrella, for example. But that is a difference amongst us and our Ahl Sunnah brothers and sisters. They don't have the same restriction. And so you'll find especially when Hajj is in the summer months and it's extremely hot, you will find that they use an umbrella to seek protection from the sun, which according to our rules of fiqh, we are not permitted to do. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. It's one of the small distinctions between the Ja'fari school of faith and the views of the Ahl Sunnah brothers and sisters. Again, bleeding or deliberately scratching yourself and causing yourself to bleed or extracting a tooth, not permitted. Okay, this picture is from many years ago. I think Rehan and I were probably in Hajj the same year when this picture was taken. Okay, you will arrive in Makkah. Depending on how you're traveling, I don't know if you're traveling by bus or you're taking the train, but whenever you arrive in Makkah, you go to your hotel, you drop off your belongings, and depending on what your group leader has organized, they will arrange for groups to go to the Haram for the next set of rituals, which are about to happen now, of which the first is Tawaf. Tawaf has 5 conditions, right? The niyyah itself, tahara, which is ritual purity, making sure that you are in the state of wudu, right? There are only a handful of actions in Hajj that require you to be in the state of wudu, of which tawaf and the salat of tawaf are the 2 key ones. The other ones are mustahab, okay? Especially Rami, for example, recommended to be in the state of wudu, but not required. But these 2 acts, tawaf and the 2 rakat salat that follows, all the tawafs of Hajj, Umrah of Hajj and Tawaf al-Nisa require you to be in the state of wudu. You also need to be physically pure, meaning that there cannot be any najasat on you, right? You cannot have any blood, for example, on your ihram anyway. You have to change your clothes of ihram in the event that your clothes of ihram become najis. Or if you're bleeding and your toe is bleeding, for example, you need to cleanse yourself of any najasat on your body before you embark on tawaf. And then 2 other requirements that are obvious as well, which inshallah we can cover if there are any questions. So I'm not going to repeat these intentions again, but you'll see that before the slide of any one of these rituals, you will see these 3 formats, right, which we talked about earlier. And you need to just remember the one, or keep in mind the one that applies to you. Don't worry about all the others. Okay. So, as far as tawaf is concerned, as I said, you need to be in the state of wudu. Now, as far as tawaf is concerned, remember what they call the rule of 4. Okay? If your wudu breaks prior to the completion of your 4th round, and we'll talk about the definition of a round in a moment, but if your wudu breaks before the 4th round, your tawaf is invalid. You have to leave, do your wudu, come back, and start afresh. Okay? If, however, your wudu breaks after the 4th round, then depending on the circumstance, whether it was voluntary or involuntary, if it was involuntary, then you go out, you do wudu, you come back, you resume from where you left off. But if it was voluntarily broken, then your tawaf is invalid, you do wudu, you come back, and you start afresh. Okay? But remember the rule of 4. If it happens before the 4th round, it's null and void, you have to come and start afresh. If it happens after, go out, do wudu, come back, and resume from where you left off. Physical purity, same idea, right? Either your clothes of ihram become najas, or there's najasat on your body, same thing. If it happens before the 4th round, then you must cleanse, come back, start again. If it happens after, then it's the same rule again. You resume from where you left off. You have to leave, right? If you get to know about it after everything is completed, no problem. But if you are aware of najasat on yourself while performing tawaf, then this applies. Either it was either before the 4th round or after the 4th round. Okay. So as far as tawaf is concerned, there are 8 things to keep in mind. And again, this is sort of a lot of information being thrown at you, but if you actually spend some time to review the slides, they're not very complicated. So I'm rushing through it. I know I'm halfway through my time, but trust me, if you spend a little bit of time reviewing the slides, it's not very difficult to understand. But there is a lot of material. There's no question about it. Okay, as far as tawaf is concerned, there are 8 obligations of tawaf. The first is, we talked about 4th round, but what is the definition of a round? The definition of a round is that every round starts at Hajarul Aswad, okay, the black stone, and every round ends at Hajarul Aswad, meaning one full circle around the Kaaba that starts at Hajar and ends at Hajar is one round. Okay? So the first 2 things, every round commences at Hajarul Aswad and every round ends at Hajarul Aswad. The third thing is that your left shoulder, right, must always be pointing towards the Kaaba as you're performing a tawaf. You're going around the Kaaba anti-clockwise. And there are rulings that talk about, if you get jostled around and all of a sudden you're facing the Kaaba, or your back is turned to the Kaaba, you're 180 degrees, you're facing backwards, etc., then what are the rules that apply? Generally, it doesn't happen, right? These rules are available, but it generally doesn't happen. The crowd is so significant, and you're all being pushed in one direction. The likelihood of you doing a 180-degree turn is almost impossible, right? But in the event that you got jostled out of position, right? You're maybe helping your wife or your mother or whatever, and you got jostled out of position, and you took a few steps now in which your left shoulder is not pointing towards the Kaaba. What's the rule? Well, one possibility is you retrace your steps back, which is not going to happen, right? Or you go around, and from where you got jostled out of position, you just resume, right? So you have to do an extra round, so to speak, but you'd have to go around and basically resume from where you got jostled out of position. But honestly, it doesn't happen very often, right? Although it seems overwhelming when you see the crowds on TV, if you're going with the flow, generally you're able to keep your left shoulder pointed towards the Kaaba. It never is a problem. Okay. The next obligation is the Hijr of Ismail must be included in Tawaf. So if you look at the pictures of the Kaaba, you will see a couple of structures in next to the Kaaba. One is a semicircle called the Hijr of Ismail alayhi salam. You have to make sure that you don't cut through that semicircle area. And generally, you won't be allowed to anyway because there are guards preventing people from doing that. People sometimes are praying inside the semicircle anyway, so you can't do that. So generally, you'll be going around the semicircle. So this rule, again, is pretty straightforward. The other point important here is that there is also like a small pillar or a structure that's called the Maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam, where you'll see the footsteps of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. It is highly recommended that you perform your tawaf between the Kaaba and the Maqam of Ibrahim in that small radius. Can you do it outside? Yes, you can. Okay, but the further out you go, the bigger the circle, the longer it takes. Okay, and people are generally intimidated by being close to the Kaaba because of how busy it is. But it actually isn't that difficult, right? It's actually easier. It's actually, it does become quiet. The closer you are to the Kaaba, the quieter it becomes, right? If you're, there is a difficult spot from the Kaaba towards Maqam, especially when it comes to the area of Hajar al-Aswad, because people are trying to rush to kiss the black stone. Okay, that part, there's a lot of pushing and shoving because people are going in to kiss the black stone. People are trying to come out after they've done, touching or kissing the black stone. It is challenging. But otherwise, I don't know, maybe 0 to 7 people in from the Kaaba is a quiet spot. If you keep going around the Kaaba, around that, in that small circle, and I don't know what it is like these days, but a few years ago, the last time I was there, 40 minutes, 45 minutes 45 minutes. Okay, I get thumbs up from RF there as well. If you're close by, it should not take you less than an hour to get it done. But if you're out, the bigger circle, depending on how far out you are, it would take much, much longer. Next thing, keep clear of the Kaaba and the Shadarwan, which is the understructure of the Kaaba while performing tawaf, which means that you should not be touching the Kaaba while doing your tawaf. If you get the opportunity to touch the Kaaba and obviously it's an overwhelming feeling, you can pause your tawaf. You go, you touch the Kaaba, you recite your du'as, and then you resume from where you left off. Okay, number of rounds, 7. Right? When we talk about the rule of 4, we talked about the rule of 4, but the obligation is to perform 7 rounds around the Kaaba. Now, doubts about the rounds. This is another important rule. You cannot doubt about how many rounds you have completed of tawaf. You need to be absolutely certain, right? You can't say, well, maybe I'm one short, I'm going to throw in one more, right? You need to be certain that you did 7. You can't just throw in 1 more or 2 more just for insurance purposes. No, it needs to be a certain amount of 7. Now, if you're there with someone else, right? Let's say you're there with your mom or with your wife, for example, and you're not sure, but she is certain. We're on round 5. 100% we're on round 5. You can rely on someone else's count, okay? And then there are techniques that the volunteers will talk to you about of how to remember, which round you're on. People recite certain du'as, certain surahs, whatever the case may be. So there are different ways of remembering which round you're on. But you need to be certain that you complete your 7 rounds. Especially for a wajib tawaf, there is no room for doubt as to how many rounds you have completed. The tawaf must be completed without considerable interruption, meaning if you interrupt your tawaf for whatever reason, you go out to do your wudu and come back. You can't go out, do wudu, and then come back like an hour later, right? If you're going out because you're in the middle of tawaf, right? If you have interrupted your tawaf because you needed to go out to do wudu, for example, then the only reasonable sort of interruption would be you go out, you do your wudu, and you come back and you resume from where you left off, right? The only exception here would be salat, right? Sometimes you begin your tawaf, and that's why we recommend if you see that salat time is setting in, don't start your tawaf, right? Give yourself a little bit of room, because typically 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour before salat time, they start shutting the place down to prepare the area for salat. So if you're getting close to salat time, don't try. I mean, you can, but recommendation would be not to start your tawaf. If, however, you've started your tawaf and they start shutting everything down and you're forced to sit down, then that's fine. You sit down, you finish your salat, and then you resume from where you left off. Okay, so there is an exception there. Tawaf must be performed of free movement, which means that unless you are, an elderly person and you require a wheelchair, and you're sort of being pushed around, that's fine. But otherwise, you need to be walking on your feet, right? You can't be lifted off the ground unless you have some sort of medical condition where you're being pushed, like I said. Okay. After you finish your tawaf, the next obligation is the salat of tawaf, the 2 rakat salat that follows. And it's supposed to be, again, the niyas are here. Again, it's one of those acts that require you to be in wudu like every other prayer. The rules of najasa, no difference. How is the 2 rakat salat recited? Like any 2 rakat salat. There are no unique surahs or different surahs that need to be recited. Like your fajr prayers, 2 rakat that needs to follow immediately after your tawaf is completed. And the 2 rakat prayers need to be recited behind Maqam of Ibrahim. And you will find that there's actually a section because everybody is reciting. So even though there is a throng of people going around doing tawaf, there's actually a cordoned off area behind Maqam where everybody is going to pray their 2 rakat namaz, right? And here again, men, women, side by side praying. This is one of those exceptions where you don't have a choice. You stand wherever you got a spot, you recite your 2 rakat salat, and you move on, creating space for someone else to come and pray. Okay, and then sa'i is the last or second last of these rituals. So once you've performed your tawaf and 2 rakat salat, the rituals requiring you to be in the state of wudu are complete. Okay. Now when you're doing sa'i, which is going back and forth between the mountains of Safa and Marwa, you don't need to be in wudu. Okay. So if your wudu was broken or you decided to take a break, you went out to the bathroom and you came back and now you're doing your sa'i. If you've done wudu, even better, but otherwise you don't need to be in the state of wudu. Okay, so as far as sa'i is concerned, it consists of 7 laps. With you starting from Safa and going to Marwa is 1. Marwa to Safa back is 2. Safa to Marwa is 3, and so on and so forth. So essentially, because you're going 7, you're ending at Marwa. Okay? A few obligations as far as sa'i is concerned. One is that you have to walk between the 2 mountains and from start to finish, right? Meaning that there's actually a slight climb at the edges of both of those mountains, right? So make sure that you go all the way up the slight incline, turn around the pillar, and then walk all the way down. And some of these rules you'll see they're similar to tawaf, right? There cannot be a significant break between while you're in the midst of sa'i. You will see 2 green lights in the middle of sa'i, and it's recommended for men to trot briskly over that period of time. Women not obligated to do that, but that harwala is only required for men. There is also one thing to keep in mind that sa'i, there's been an expansion over many years of the floors in which sa'i is available. Both for tawaf and for sa'i, one of our Shi'i differences is that the tawaf cannot be performed, as far as we're concerned, above the Kaaba, right? Which means that the floors above the ground floor, which are above the Kaaba, we cannot perform tawaf there, okay? And therefore, we perform tawaf on the ground floor. Sa'i, on the other hand, you have two floors available, either the ground floor or the basement. And so if you're going with a volunteer who's been there before, they can show you the path to go to the basement or the ground floor. Either of those two floors are permitted, but there's a floor above that as well. But again, that's not permitted because it is above the mountains of Safa and Marwa, right? So as far as we are concerned, any of these rituals cannot be performed above the either the Kaaba or the mountains of Safa and Marwa. The other part to keep in mind is that when you're walking, especially on the ground floor, when you're walking from Safa to Marwa, they've actually expanded the area outwards in order to increase capacity. If you walk too far out on the edge, you're actually outside the ambit of the mountains of Safa and Marwa. And so recommendation is try to stick to the middle as best as you can, and the middle is actually a wheelchair lane. So if in both directions you're staying towards the left, close to sort of that middle section where the wheelchair lane is, you're safely within the ambit of the mountains of Safa and Marwa. As far as the doubts in the number of rounds, again, you'd only be having doubts about either odd numbers or even numbers, right? Because depending on which direction you're heading in. But the same rule applies, right? You cannot be uncertain about the number of rounds you have completed. You need to be absolutely certain, and therefore rely on someone else's count if required. Okay, and then the last act is taqsir. And taqsir is, again, not required to be in wudu. Taqsir is basically clipping a little bit of hair after having completed your sa'i, and now having clipped a little bit of hair, you are now officially out of the state of ihram. You will find that amongst Ahl Sunnah brothers and sisters, some of them will actually shave their head at this stage. We generally do not shave our heads at this stage. We shave our heads on the day of Eid after the rituals of Hajj are underway. Okay, so at this stage of your Umrah, of your Hajj, you're completing your Umrah. All you're doing is clipping a little bit of hair, and at that point, then all the 25 prohibitions that we talked about a moment ago are all lifted. You can put on your regular clothes, put on perfume. Everything is fair game until the rituals of Hajj begin in a few days. So depending on when you arrive in Makkah, you'll probably have, my guess is probably 3-4 days before Hajj actually begins. But over those 3 or 4 days, all restrictions that you had while in the state of Ihram have been removed. So very quick recap, the 5 rituals of Umrah: Ihram, Tawaf, Salatul Tawaf, Sa'i, and Taqsir. Okay. Hajj Tamattu. So Hajj, as I said earlier, consists of 2 parts. One is the Umrah portion, which I know I covered in a little bit of detail, but for those of you who have been for Umrah before, it should have been very familiar. Okay. The part that is different is this part, which is the Hajj portion. Hajj consists of 13 rituals, some of which will be familiar because we have covered them in Umrah. Okay? So the 13 are wearing ihram, wuquf at Arafah, wuquf at Muzdalifah, Rami, Qurbani, and Halaq on the day of Eid, and then Tawaf al-Hajj, the Salat of Tawaf, Sa'i, Tawaf al-Nisa, Salat of Tawaf al-Nisa, staying in Mina for the 11th and 12th nights in Mina, and then Rami on the 11th and 12th. And we'll go over these so that it's a little bit clearer. But in a nutshell, these are the 13 rituals that are covered over a span of 3 days that consist of Hajj itself. Okay. So, Ihram. We talked earlier about a miqat. Where do you wear your Ihram? When coming from Medina, you wear it at Masjid al-Shajara, right? But if you are now already in Makkah, right, you cannot enter Makkah without Ihram. That's why you wear it in Medina or just outside Medina before you head towards Makkah. But now you're already in Makkah, and you need to wear your Ihram for Hajj. You can wear it in the hotel, you can do your niyyah in the hotel. Recommendation is that you put on your clothes of Ihram, but you go to the Haram and do your niyyah and talbiyah in the Haram itself. right? That's the recommendation. Okay. The requirements of ihram in this ihram are identical to the ihram we've talked about earlier, so I'm not going to go over them again, but you can review them on the slides. The niyyah as well, I'm not going to go over because in the interest of time, but you can review them on the slides. Now, again, depending on logistics, which we'll let the volunteers cover probably on the ground, the requirement for the first or the second ritual in Hajj after wearing your ihram is wuquf at Arafah, just being on the plains of Arafah. And the requirement for that is to be on the plains of Arafah on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah from the afternoon, so from Dhuhr till sunset or till Maghrib. Okay? So, and there's nothing to do there, other than recite du'as, but there's no ritual to be performed there other than being present in Arafah, right? Okay. And I'm guessing Sheikh Nuru talked about it, but really, Arafah is considered to be the crux of Hajj, right? The traditions say, Al-Hajju Arafah. Hajj is Arafat itself, right? There are so many traditions that say, I think one from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that says that any sins that have not been forgiven on the nights of Layal al-Qadr, in the month of Shahr Ramadan, if someone wants an opportunity for those sins to be forgiven, the only place is Arafah. And so it tells you the significance of Arafah. And for those who are blessed to be in Arafah on that day, don't take that opportunity lightly. Right? It is a significant blessing to be blessed with an opportunity to be on the plains of Arafah on that day. Right? Okay. After Maghrib sets in and you have finished your stay and the organizers will talk you how to best take advantage of that afternoon, the next ritual requirement is the wuquf at Muzdalifah or Mash'ar. Right? So unlike Arafah, where there are actually tents and people are sitting under tents, Muzdalifah, you're there on the night now, which is the 10th night of Dhul Hijjah. It's open ground. There's nothing, right? And again here, there's no ritual to be performed other than just presence in Muzdalifah, right? So these two places, the two wuqufs, right? There's nothing to do, but you have to be on the plains of Arafah on the afternoon of the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. And then on the night of the 10th, which is the night now, the day of Eid is coming up, on that night, just presence in Muzdalifah is required. Okay. For men, one thing to remember from Muzdalifah is that you're required to be in Muzdalifah from dawn to sunrise minimum, right? So we generally arrive there at night, but we cannot leave Muzdalifah until sunrise, not until Fajr, until sunrise, right? So we generally tend to walk towards the border of Mina so that once the sun has risen and you know that sun has risen, then you cross into Mina. But you cannot leave Muzdalifah until sunrise. Women, however, are allowed on that evening to leave early. But both men and women, in Muzdalifah, this is where we pick our 70 pebbles, okay? And again, there's descriptions of how the pebbles need to look like, but you need to pick 70 pebbles that you will then be using to strike the Jamarat on the days that follow. Okay, now you've crossed into Mina. It is Eid day, right? We said that men are required to be in Muzdalifah until sunrise. It is the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. People back home are getting ready to go to the mosque for Eid Salat. Those who are blessed to be in performing their Hajj are now performing the three rituals that are required for Eid day, right? You're in the state of Ihram, remember? You cross into Mina, and there are three things that we must do on that day. The first is Rami, which is stoning the Jamarat. But on this day, the first day, the day of Eid, there are three pillars, right? And we'll talk about that for the subsequent days. But on the day of Eid, you're only stoning one pillar, the third one, Jamratul Aqaba. Okay, so now when you're stoning the pillar, Jamratul Aqaba, you need to stone with 7 pebbles. Okay, so generally people, what they do is, because as you walk towards the Jamarat area, you take a few extra pebbles with you in case you need them, right? So you're only required to stone 7. But there used to be a time many years ago where it used to be a very small pillar. Now it's a huge wall, and you'll see the picture in the slides. It's a huge wall, right? The assumption is that the middle part of the wall is where the original pillar was, and therefore you do the best you can to aim towards the middle of that elongated wall. And it's easy to do. If you walk towards the far end of that elongated wall, you'll get to a quiet spot, because everybody is trying to stone from the very beginning, throwing their slippers and their stones from the very beginning, right? Everybody thinks that they're, the best baseball player that existed, and throwing from as far as they want. But if you go close to the end, it's quiet. Everybody wants to do it at the beginning. If you just walk around and go to the end, it's quiet. And then you turn around and you can actually see your 7 pebbles strike. It's never been a problem, right? And you can aim for the middle. But a few things to keep in mind. One, there must be 7. You must be absolutely certain that 7 pebbles struck, right? And you'll be surprised that with thousands of people throwing their pebbles, you'll actually see your pebbles strike. It's not difficult, especially if you go toward the quiet end, you'll actually see your pebbles strike with certainty, okay? Okay. So that's what the wall looks like. Right? It's a big wall, and it's a busy place, that's for sure. But all you do is, if you go to the far end, you'll get a chance to aim for the middle, and you do the best you can. You flick your pebbles, and you'll see them strike, inshallah. Okay. The next act on Eid day is Qurbani. There was a time when we used to go to do our own Qurbani, but I believe now we have agents who are assigned the responsibility to perform Qurbani on our behalf. So basically what happens is, after you have completed your Rami for that day, the organizers will advise the agents who are performing Qurbani on your behalf to say, okay, Aqil has performed his Jamarat now, and now, you can proceed with performing his Qurbani. And then you wait for confirmation, which the volunteers will get to say, okay, your Qurbani has now been performed. But until then, you're waiting until your Qurbani has been performed so that you can proceed to the next ritual. One thing to keep in mind, and I didn't say this earlier, is that rituals need to be performed in sequence. You can't perform them out of sequence. There are a couple of exceptions, but as a general rule, the actions need to be performed in sequence. Therefore, after Rami is completed, you wait for confirmation that your Qurbani has now been completed. There will be an announcement that says, okay, your Qurbanis have now been completed. You can now proceed to the next act, which is Halaq. This is where, as I said earlier, this is the day on which men shave their heads, as far as we're concerned. The Ahl Sunnah, some of them shave their heads at the end of Umrah. We only do taqseer at the end of Umrah. But on Eid day, after the Qurbani has been completed, or you've gotten word that your Qurbani has been completed, you can now proceed with Halaq. This is when you shave your head. Remember, before every ritual, just have that state of mind as to what ritual is about to be performed, right? That is essentially your niyyah. Once you have completed these 3 rituals on Eid day, Rami of Jamratul Aqaba, your Qurbani, and your Halaq. For women, it's no Halaq, it's just taqseer, right, on that day. Once these 3 rituals are completed, your clothes of ihram can come off. So it's only these couple of days where you're actually in the state of ihram, right? But there are 3 restrictions that remain, okay? One is the use of perfume. This is the reason why on your list of things to take, you'll be asked to take unscented soap, right? And that unscented soap is used for these periods of time when you're doing your ghusl, mustahab ghusl, before you put on your ihram, or after you have completed Eid day rituals, you use unscented soap to keep washing your hands or showering, etc., because you still cannot use perfume yet. Intimacy with one's spouse, not permitted. And third is hunting, okay? And at various stages over the remaining rituals, these three restrictions get lifted, okay? But on Eid day, after your halaq is completed, everything, all of the restrictions other than these three are lifted. The 25 that we talked about earlier are all lifted. Now, I'll probably need 5 more extra minutes, yeah? So we'll try to wrap up quickly. What are the rituals that are left? So, tawaf of Hajj and the salat of tawaf and sa'i, right? Again, the tawaf, the 2 rakat salat, and the sa'i are performed identically to how we perform them in Umrah. The rules are identical, no difference. Other than the niyyah being different, the rituals themselves are performed the same way. When do you perform these rituals? There is no restriction. You can perform them at any point in time before you leave. Now, I don't know how the organizers will be making recommendations this year. I think they sort of play it by ear every year. In the past, what we have done is that we have gone on the 12th night, right, to go for performing salatul tawaf and sa'i. However, I will leave that with the organizers to talk about in terms of logistics of what they feel is best to do on the ground. But I'm going to talk about the rituals themselves. The tawaf, salatul tawaf, and sa'i are done the same way. They can be performed on the 11th night. Remember, Eid day is the 10th. So people will maybe rest for a little bit of time. Sometimes people will leave to go and perform these rituals after midnight on the 11th. Some will spend the night and go the next night. It's up to you, right? There is flexibility. Some people will do it on their own. Some people will follow the lead of the organizers. But I will leave that for you to decide on, when you're on the ground. So the rules are the same as what we've talked about as far as Umrah is concerned. After you complete, assuming you go on the 12th night, okay, which is what we've done for many years. It logistically was feasible in those days. I can't talk about now. But in those days, when we used to go on the 12th night, there was enough time at night to perform your salat, your 2 rakat salat, your sa'i, come back after sa'i, perform your tawaf on nisa, and 2 rakat salat, and finish all of these 5 rituals before Fajr. It was possible, right? It is possible. But we'll leave it with the organizers to determine, because it also depends on when you're traveling, right? Because when you're traveling to leave Makkah, you have that constraint to make sure that all of the rituals are completed before you leave. After you perform the first 3 of the rituals I talked about, salat, the 2 rakat salat, and sa'i, when sa'i is completed, the restriction on the use of perfume is lifted. Okay? So now you can use perfume. After you perform your tawaf on nisa and your 2 rakat salat that follows, the restriction on intimacy is lifted. And then the restriction on hunting is just automatically lifted on the 13th of Dhul Hijjah. Okay? So just keep those 2 in mind. Generally, people will perform these 3 rituals as a unit. Tawaf of Hajj, Salat, and Sa'i, right? And then you don't have to perform Tawaf al-Nisa and the 2 rakat Salat that follows immediately thereafter. You can take a little bit of a break, you can come back and do it the next day. It's no problem. But a lot of people, if they have the time, they will finish off their Tawaf. It's another 45 minutes to an hour. You finish your Tawaf al-Nisa and your 2 rakat Salat, and you are able to get it all completed. Just one thing that was brought to my attention earlier today, we talked about footwear. When you are in Masjid al-Haram, right, performing your tawaf and your sa'i, some people do wear their footwear, but respect the mosque, right? You'll see the vast majority of people will take their slippers and their sandals off. And so please do that, and don't be wearing your slippers or sandals while performing tawaf or sa'i. Okay, that leaves just a couple of more rituals. So this one's, I'll spend just a couple of minutes talking about this one just so that it's clear. The 10th day is when you arrive in Mina, right? The 3 rituals you performed on Eid day. Your Rami, your Qurbani, and your Halaq, right? Eid day is now complete. It's the 10th day of Dhul Hijjah. We're required to spend at least half the night of the 11th and the 12th in Mina, right? That is why you cannot just leave to go and perform the rituals of tawaf whenever you want, because there is this other restriction to keep in mind, which is that the 11th and 12th, a minimum of half the night must be spent in Mina. So you can spend the whole night if you want, but a minimum of half the night must be spent, right? So keep those, again, the only requirement is to be present in Mina for half the 11th night or the 12th. Either the first or the second half, but either one, doesn't matter. Vast majority of people will say we'll spend the whole night of the 11th, and then the first half of the night on the 12th, and then we'll go after, because they will have had enough time to rest, right, after the rituals of the first couple of days. And then the last ritual to talk about is Rami again. So we said on the first day that we're only stoning Jamaratul Aqaba, the third of the pillars, with 7 pebbles. On the 11th day and the 12th day, we're stoning all 3 of the Jamarat with 7 pebbles each. The rules are identical, right? You need to watch the pebbles hit, walk towards the end of the wall, you'll be able to see your pebbles hit. No difference, right? But now on the 11th day and the 12th day, you're using 21 and 21. So you've used 42 on those 2 days, plus the 7 that you used on the first day. You've used 49 pebbles. You have an extra 21. If you are a good shot, you've got 21 left. You haven't needed to waste any pebbles. And that's because in the event you're not able to get out of Mina on the 12th of Dhul Hijjah, and you actually happen to be there on the 13th, on the next day you stone another 21, which is why you have 70, right? Very rarely happens. You will leave your 21 pebbles in Mina and you will head back, right? Because you will have done the final actions that you need to, right? I'm not going to talk about timing of when you will go and when you will do these rituals. I will let the volunteers talk about that when you're there. It's easier to understand when you're on the ground as to logistics and timing. But essentially, these 13 rituals then consist of the Hajj Tamattu' itself. Ihram, the Wuquf at Arafah on the afternoon of the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, the Wuquf at Muzdalifah on the night of the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, and then on the day of 10th of Dhul Hijjah, which is day of Eid, Rami, which is stoning just the one Jamarat al-Aqaba on that day, Qurbani, the slaughtering of the animal, and Halaq, which is the shaving of the head for men, or taqsir for ladies. Eid day is now complete. Then you have another tawaf to perform, which is the tawaf al-Hajj, 2 rakat salat that follows, and sa'i. Those 3 rituals, followed by tawaf al-Nisa and another 2 rakat salat that follows. Again, timing of these rituals is flexible, right? Depending on when you're up to it and when the organizers suggest that you go out and perform these rituals. And the last 2 to keep in mind is half the night, a minimum of half the night on the 11th and the 12th night of Dhul Hijjah spent in Mina. There are exceptions, but we won't go into the exceptions. And then on the day of the 11th and the 12th, during the course of the day, there's no set time, doing Rami of all 3 of the Jamarat on those 2 days, right? Al-Ula, Al-Wusta, and Al-Aqaba. All three of them, 777 on those 2 days. And upon completion of these rituals on generally the 12th afternoon is when people start leaving Mina. Your Hajj is now complete, assuming you've already performed your Salat and your Tawaf of Hajj and your Tawaf al-Nisa and the Salat that follows. Your Hajj is now complete. Recommendation would be try to get it done before the 12th, because after that, everybody's back, right? Remember that when people are coming in for Umrah, people are coming in at different times. Some have already arrived, you'll be arriving on a given day, people will come after you. The rush is not too bad. But after Hajj is complete and everybody's coming back from Mina, everybody who was there for Hajj that year is now back in Makkah, right? Now getting into Haram is an extremely difficult challenge, right? So if you can, ideally, complete your Tawaf and your Tawaf al-Nisa before you return back from Mina, because the logistics of doing it after are extremely difficult. Now, the only other thing that we haven't touched about, and I believe there will be a ladies' seminar, because there are rules. There will be a ladies' seminar. There are specific rules as far as the menstrual cycles of women are concerned, and what the constraints are for ladies in those circumstances. So I will park that for Sister Tahira Bai Qasim Ali to handle that. It's still doable, right? But there are some constraints that you need to bear in mind in the event that the onset of the cycle comes in and you're still in the midst of performing your Hajj. So we'll stop there. I know I've gone a little bit over time, but happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Akil. This is not an easy task to cover so much material in an hour and let's say 20 minutes. So a couple of quick questions. So we will now take 2 or 3 minute break, but you can't leave here. You will be served because I think you need some refreshments. So first of all, to my Sunnah brothers and sisters, you see there are some differences, so don't worry. Every ritual towards your fiqh aspect will be taken care of. So for example, when Akil Bhai said we are going from Makkah to Arafat, we understand that you have to go to Mina first. That part will be taken care of. Also, we refer to Tawaful Nisa. You may refer to that as Tawaful Wida. That all things will be sorted. So please do not take that, this is the way to do it only. We will follow your fiqh, so you'll be fully taken care of, okay? So we are covering this as, as we said, fiqh aspects, right? Now, one of the questions is, why do you have to do 7 rounds? Why do you hit the shaitan 7 pebbles, right? When we pick. So there is an amazing resource of Dr. Ali Sherati, the Hajj. He goes into those details about why, not only how and when we are doing this. So to elevate your Hajj experience, you also need to understand the why, right? So for example, when you're hitting the shaitan 7 pebbles, shaitan is not there in the wall. That's a ritual. We need to find 7 vices from ourselves, which we promise the Almighty we're going to get rid of. And when we say 49, that's a homework for us. When we sacrifice the animal, that's what Nabi Ibrahim did. What is your Ismail? That's some spiritual aspects of Hajj which we all need to think through, okay? So inshallah, so we'll now take Q&A while... Okay, one question from an online viewer was as follows. This was a question from the ladies, Akil. Can the lady look at the mirror to check that her hijab is okay and her hair are not showing?
Yes.
Okay, so the answer is yes. Okay, any questions from the floor? Okay, one more point. We are focusing the Q&A on the lecture which Akil Bhai gave. Any questions about the logistics and everything else we have in our minds will be after Akil's Q&A session is done, because Inayat Bhai will speak, maybe potentially Arif Bhai will speak to go other questions we have in our mind. Okay, so this Q&A is focusing on his lecture.
Jazakallah, thank you so much for the session. One question regarding Salatul Tawaf in all Salat. Given the rush that there, is there a restriction of men and women praying beside each other or front and back? And how does that work?
No. So I think I may have touched on it, but maybe not clearly enough. No restriction. This is one of those exceptions where if you happen to be standing, next to a lady or behind a lady while praying your 2 rakat salat, it's one of those exceptions where there is no restriction. So you just recite your 2 rakat salat wherever you get the spot. There was one other question that came up while we had a break, which is about halaq. Halaq is not wajib, even for men, but highly recommended, right? So if you perform your taqsir, you can perform your taqsir, but I can assure you Habibai walks around with a trimmer. So if you don't perform your halaq, he'll help you with it.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much.
Just one, if I can. One point. If you intend to perform halaq, right, you can't trim a little bit or cut a little bit and then go back and say, now I'm going to take it off, right? Because then you've already performed your taqsir. If you intend to do halaq, just shave it off one shot, right? Because otherwise your taqsir is performed already. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you so much for this session. It's been really informational. Quick question. Historically, when traveling from Medina to Makkah, we're taking a bus or whatever, we stop by Masjid Shajara, put on our ihram, do all of that, then go on straight to Makkah. But this year, we're taking the train from Medina to Makkah. So if we go to Masjid Shajara and we go back into Medina, is there any issues with that? Is there kafara we have to pay to then go back into Medina or anything like that?
No, there isn't. I don't know what the logistics are, how you intend to go, but no, there is no, as far as the technical ruling is concerned, no. There is no kafara to go to pay because you're going back to Medina before you're heading to Makkah.
Assalamu alaikum, Akil uncle. Thanks for the session. It's much appreciated. My question is about the mirrors and the reflections. So if we're using our cell phone, for example, and you can sometimes see the reflection, is that okay if your intention is not to?
Yeah. See the point I made, make it again, which is seeing yourself in a reflective surface is okay as long as it is not intended for beautification. So when you arrive in the hotel, for example, right, it's common to have mirrors in the elevator, right? Even though it may not be intentional, you look up, you'll see yourself in the mirror. That glance wasn't intended for beautification. Just like when you're looking at your cell phone and you see a reflection of yourself, it's not intended for beautification. That's perfectly fine.
Thank you.
Yes.
You mentioned with the salat after the tawafs, the two, or three,
Yes.
behind Maqam Ibrahim. Can we pray inside Maqam Ibrahim for those ones or no?
No, so Maqam Ibrahim is just...
I'm thinking the Hajar Aswa.
No.
You have to be
can't.
behind it.
No.
Okay.
Maqam Ibrahim is just... see if I can find the picture again. Did I pass it already?
Yes. So it has to be outside of
this one
Hajar Aswa. It can't be within.
No, it's actually not even visible in this picture. It's actually behind the Kaaba here. But actually, I can. There's a different picture on here that will show. See this small dot there? That's Maqam Ibrahim. It's
Okay.
just a small
Right.
mini minaret,
Yes.
if you want to call
Got
it.
it.
Yeah, it's a very small structure. You can pray behind it. You can't pray. You can't pray inside
Within
as
it,
such,
within
yeah.
it. I meant so inside
But the
Hajar
Hijr
Aswad
of
that you-
Ismail, no.
Okay.
Because the requirement is to pray behind maqam, so you cannot pray inside the Hijr.
Right. Second question, I know when we do ziyarat, we sometimes carry little water sprays to redo wudu.
Yes.
Instead of having to leave the haram and do wudu, is that an option or no? Because like you said, if it's before the fourth tawaf versus, is that or no? That's not recommended.
So yeah, I mean, if you carry a spray bottle in your bag, so that in the event that you need to perform wudu, you can. Yes, you absolutely can. Obviously, you can't do it while you're in the midst of the tawaf, but you can step away, find a spot, do your wudu with a spray bottle, and come back and do it. No problem. Just one other thing to call out there is that there is Zamzam water available to drink, but you'll see signs there that says, do not use this for wudu, so you can't use it for wudu, right? So if you don't have a spray bottle, you'll be forced to go outside to perform your wudu, because some of that drinking water is not intended for wudu.
I just want to add something about praying behind Maqam Ibrahim. When we say pray behind it, you're going to pray way back behind it. Don't try and pray directly behind it where it is. You'll get run over. Logistically, it's not feasible to do that. And it's actually quite a hazard. So think about your safety when you're doing things. Behind it means, it doesn't mean necessarily immediately behind, but it's just in line with it. Okay? And you'll see lots of places that are cordoned off where you can pray, and there's nobody going to walk over you at that time.
There are people praying in that section anyway, because everybody's praying their 2 rakat salat, so just find a spot with them and pray. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, Akil Bhai. Thank you so much for this lecture. I learned something new today. I have one question to ask you. Supposing if I land in Jeddah and I'm not going to Medina, I'm going to Mecca.
Yeah.
And Al-Bayt arrange a transportation for me. If it's possible that I could go to Jaffa and do my niyat, or if I'm not allowed to go to Jaffa, let's say the driver says, no, sorry, I can't take you to Jaffa, you're going straight in the bus to Mecca. Then where do I make the niyat, where do I wear the ihram?
Yeah. So, Inayat Bhai is asking a trick question, because he's done, 50 Hajj probably.
We actually have people in this situation.
Yeah. So Inayat Bhai actually forewarned me before that he was going to ask this question. So, see, for those who arrive in Jeddah, if you're going straight to Makkah from Jeddah and you're not going to Medina like the traditional route, then there are 2 choices, right? The miqat for someone who has arrived in Jeddah and is going straight to Makkah from Jeddah is Jaffa, okay? An hour and a half away. But let's say your logistics don't allow you to go to Jaffa to put on your ihram formally, then what are the options? There is an option. The option is that you could do a vow that says that I am going to be wearing my ihram from Jeddah, right? And if you do that nadhr, then you can actually wear your clothes of ihram and do the niyyah and talbiyah in Jeddah and put yourself into the state of ihram from Jeddah itself, and then you head towards Makkah. So that's perfectly fine. It's not sort of circumventing the rules. The Masail actually allow you to do a nadhr in advance, that you're going to wear your ihram in Jeddah and you put it on. The restrictions of not traveling during the day, etc., all remain. So you just have to be careful about, time of day. But you could do your nadhr and wear your ihram in Jeddah and you proceed forward.
Any more questions?
Gee.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. I've heard that now the men are not allowed to do tawaf if you are not in ihram. So once your ihram is out, I went 25 years ago, so that was different. Once your ihram is out and you have decided to wear your normal clothes, then you do your tawaf al-hajj and the other tawaf al-nisa. Do we have to put the ihram just for the sake of, or we just hold on to our ihram until after that?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been in the last couple of years when this restriction was in place, but I believe, Habib, I can answer, but I believe you, I guess shar'an, there is no problem with putting on the clothes of ihram to enter the ground floor so you can do your mustahab tawaf. From an akhlaqi standpoint, it's a different conversation.
This is wajib tawaf, right?
No, wajib tawaf, so you'll be wearing ihram anyway, no? So okay, that's a good question. When you come back from Hajj, they don't restrict, because everybody's coming back in regular clothes. That restriction is in place during Umrah time. But after Hajj, because everybody's coming in regular clothes, when coming back from Mina, performing their tawaf, over those span of days, that restriction is not in place.
Yeah. So to add, Gulamas, to your question, so let's say we have completed Umrah, right? In Umrah, you are wearing the you are in the state of ihram, you're wearing the ihram clothes, and then you come back, right? Now, potentially you may have an extra day or two before you go to Arafat, right? So this question has been debated various times by different scholars, and some of the scholars are of the opinion that allow the people who have just come from Medina and they want to do the tawaf, so don't wear the fake clothes of ihram and do a sunnah tawaf. Give them the opportunity to finish their wajibat. Because what you are doing after you are off ihram, you are doing a sunnah tawaf. Allow the opportunity for people who have just come from Medina or other parts from other miqats to do their wajib tawaf. But as Akil Bhai is right, that once the umrah is done for Hajj tawaf, nobody is wearing the clothes of ihram. Everybody is off. So there is no restrictions to do the tawaf at the main level. Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Wow, okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Akil. So Inayat Bhai, you are now here, can give us an address. Thank you. So while Inayat Bhai comes, we all know Inayat Bhai. So one on a lighter note, right? If you ask any volunteers, any questions, any number of times, we will answer the question, right? You may have asked that question before, but again, you want to make sure we will answer. If you ask me, Arif, all the volunteers, if you ask Inayat a question which he has already talked about, he will tell you what part of English you did not understand. Okay, so I'm just pre-warning you, you'll hear this. So ask all the questions to the volunteers, but not him. Can we have a loud salawat, please?
Assalamu alaikum to all. Akil Bhai, Rehan, Habib, Sabira, Zahida, Safraz. You guys have been all the time with me. It's my right hand, left hand, front hand, back hand. And I thank you for taking your time on a long weekend to come here. Especially Rehan had to go somewhere. I said, no, I'll come for the seminar. I thank you guys for coming. And I thank all those guys who came in, especially Mujahid, who came late, but he came, he made it. He's used to, he doesn't like to park here. He parks across the street, so he was confused today. Anyway, now I've done my thinking. And what I want to do is I want to ask one question, right? Question is, what if? Right? We are all granted, we are all going to Hajj, it's all construction. We got the money, we got the dollars, we got everything. We also got the gifts that we're going to buy there. What if you don't go there? What if you don't make it? I've seen people in my life come as far as Medina, and they had to turn back. They had everything. So you guys should thank yourself, first of all, that you got an opportunity to go to God's house. He's invited you. There were so many other IT people, and there are so many other non-IT people. The non-IT people made it. And the IT people are still confused, what did we do wrong? Maybe it was not their time to go. Maybe God didn't want him that time. So every dagle pagle, every step you take, thank God for giving you this opportunity. You know how many people will die without even doing Hajj? So you have an opportunity to go to Hajj. So make the best out of it, right? Every time, even if you say, thank you, Allah, thank you so much, right? Even if you have to hit a 2 rakat namaz in between, do it. He hears you, he appreciates you, what you're doing. So from as of today, every now and then, thank Allah for what he has given you, what he's done for you, right? We are just sources here. We just come and help you guys, but it's up to you. I don't have my glasses now. Let me wear my glasses here. Let's say you finished your Hajj, right? And you come back here. And there's no change in you. You're same miserable guy like me. Every time you hit somebody here and there. Then what's the point? It's just like something you tick off a bucket list. So if you go to Hajj, start changing. And if you change, then it's worth your money that you spent when you come back, you should have been another person in life, not the same old guy. So from now on, everything you do is for the pleasure of Allah. I also recommend some of you guys, you all been praying, we've been doing wudu all the time, all your life. Go and do wudu in front of somebody. Say, check me out. How am I doing my wudu? Right? You don't need to have brains about it, but don't feel shy. Ask somebody, how do I do the wudu? How am I doing my wudu? Check me out. Or even have to pray 2 rakat namaz in front of somebody. So listen, I'm praying 2 rakat namaz. See if there's any mistakes in my... Because those 2 rakat namaz are very important, that you should be reciting it just right. We will all, after the Hajj on the 12th day, we'll all sit down, we'll all meet on the 3rd shaitan and we'll hug each other. Right? And that's when you finish your Hajj. You will all be passed 100%. But who wants to pass with honors? Like, I never cared. If I got 50%, I was happy in school. But nowadays, the younger generation, they want 100 and plus. They want honors besides the number. So if you've helped somebody, if you've taken care of somebody, you looked after somebody, and you've given somebody a smile, and you've taken something from it, given him something, you are counted as honor student, and you pass with honors. So try to aim for that. Try to aim, by the time the Hajj is finished, try to know, it's not only us here, we're 160, 170 people. Try to know each other. So let's say tomorrow you end up going to New York, and the guy from New York will see you in the mosque. He'll say, oh, come on, we remember we went to Hajj together. I get that all the time, and I said, no, I forget, because I don't have a big IT member here. So try to see if you can make a lot of friends and know each other. Ihram for men is 2 pieces, not 1 piece. The bottom and the top. The bottom and the top, the 2 pieces. Right? It's going to be hot in the tents, so don't mean you take out the top. I don't want to see your muscles that you've been pumping at the gym. Right? So try to wear ihram all the time. Be in ihram all the time, which means 2 pieces. Now in Arafat, you probably see somebody sleeping and it's cold and he's got the blanket on. Don't wake him up. Just move his blanket from his feet. Like Akil said earlier, the blanket should not be covering your feet or the head. But don't wake him up. Just move his blanket up so that the feet are open. Okay? Even the t-shirts, right? When men wear t-shirts, wear decent t-shirts, long t-shirts, right? And like you are in front of public. You can walk around in Arafat or something. In Mina, you'll have your t-shirt. Walk around with some nice, decent t-shirts. Halak. All the hair that comes off your head, that much sawab you get for it. That much, you have to take it all off. I don't want to see anybody saying, oh, sorry, I can't. Unless you have some medical reasons, then it's different. But try to take it all off. Especially if it is your first Hajj, but do it. And secondly, in Mina, just to let the ladies know, if you call your husbands honey, don't call honey there, because they all look alike. So you don't want to chase somebody else's guy and say, hey, honey, right? So make sure, they all look alike, you watch it. So be careful, okay? That's about it. That's all I have to say. Thank you for coming on the long weekend. And if there is any question, don't feel shy to ask. I don't answer anything. Before I can even answer, somebody is already there typing answers, right? And that's great. That's very nice, right? Thank you so much for coming.
Okay. Arif, you want to say anything? Any questions for Jamie? Just stay there for a second. So this is now the time for any of your logistics questions, anything else? Someone?
Can you write down the question and give it to me? I can. Okay, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. I can if you want.
No, I'm just joking.
Okay. Thank you so much for organizing this session. It's been really helpful and informative to all of us. My question is on logistics. If the geopolitical situation becomes worse and we are unable to go for Hajj, logistically, what happens with Nusuk and the funds that we've already paid for?
I had a call with Trump yesterday. He said in 2 weeks it's going to be over. So is it going to be backing off or is it going to do something? I have no idea. But legally, so far, Al Bayt has said we are going to go ahead, right? We had a meeting last week, and as a matter of fact, on the 12th, I would like to see all of you come. Have you registered? Yes? It's going to be nice dinner, nice snacks, and mind you, there's going to be lectures after lectures after lectures, right? But it will be nice. And especially Omar, who is the head of the Al Bayt, is coming. So try to make it. And we would like to see our B5 400 represented there. Mind you, there's going to be 400 people, and we're going to be around about 50, I think. But do come, please. Right? So at least mingle with them. There will be some fun things to do, right? So try to make it. It's on the 12th, right? And it's in Mississauga, on Dixie Road. Logistically, you don't have to worry. Everybody's on WhatsApp. We'll be, brainwashing you, right? I mean, this is too much in one day to digest. That's why we said the slides are there. You can read the books. You can ask questions. Don't feel shy. Any other questions?
Any other questions? This has been a very quiet group from a question perspective. Historically, we don't finish until namaz time. It's only 12. We have 1.5 hours to go. No, I'm just checking. Yes, sir.
In the past, have there ever been, it's a mix of a fiqh and fiqh question. In the past, has there ever been instances where in Saudi, for example, they say that the month has started at this time, or we are in Mina or in Arafah on days that we're not supposed, like according to Sayyid Sistani, it's a different day that he says that we have to be there. Something along those lines, if you can.
So I'll have Akil answer the question. Everybody understood the question? So we may have differences in the days of Zil Hijjah.
If Inayat Bhai wants to take the question, I'm happy to have him answer the question. Yeah, so it's a good question. It's a good question. The question, maybe I'll word the question a little bit differently, which is, as far as the start of the month of Dhul Hijjah is concerned, obviously there are different views that the Saudi authorities may have about the start of the month compared to our traditional views. You see this in Shahr Ramadan every year, right? They start the month of Ramadan on a different day, we start on a different day. They celebrate Eid on a different day, we celebrate Eid on a different day. The Maraja are unanimous that in this particular situation, even if we may have a different view on the start of the month of Dhul Hijjah, as far as the arkan of Hajj are concerned, you perform them together with the rest of the Muslim Ummah, and it doesn't take anything away from your Hajj in that regard.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, thanks to the volunteers for setting up the session. My question is on the wajib two rakat namaz after the tawaf. Are we, or is it obligatory for us to use the more sajdakar? I know that I've heard there's been conflicts and questions around Shia versus Sunni and all that, so I'd like to get your thought on that.
Yeah, that's an excellent question in terms of sajdakar.
Yeah, so the question on what you can perform sajda on, I think if you look at the slides, after the Hajj slides, there's an answer to that question. But as far as the wajib 2 rakat salat after the 3 tawafs, because you're performing them behind maqam and that floor is a marble floor, there's no issue. So you'll be able to perform your 2 rakat salat. That question is a bigger question on regular salat, right? Where you have carpet flooring in different parts of the mosque, especially in Medina, for example. There are pockets where you can find space for marble floor, or I don't know if are we giving prayer mats? Yeah. So you'll get a prayer mat which has that, you'll see an example of it, which has the straw section at the top, so you can use that to pray. So in the event that you don't find a spot where you can put your head down, then you'll inshallah be getting, everybody will be getting a prayer mat, and you can then use it in Arafat and Mina as well, where the floors are not going to be usable for sajda, so you could use that as well.
Okay, maybe Arif, you can go over the supplies which the group will provide. Mike, Arif.
Yeah, so here it is, right? So we've come up with creativity over our years of experience. So everybody will get a bag, which will allow you to carry your books. It'll allow you to carry your books. You can put your shoes in here. And then we've kept a straw mat, so you can use this anywhere you want. So that's available. You'll also be given a lovely travel prayer mat, which is quite useful, not only there, but everywhere you go, okay? Now, there's one key to this. When you receive this, the straw is going to be covered by plastic. Please make sure you remove this, because it caused a lot of issues last year for us. So just peel it off. It takes a few seconds, but it will come off, and then you have the access to the straw, okay? So please make sure you take off the plastic. We'll remind everybody again when we hand them out, but peel the plastic.
Okay, so to add to the musalla and the bag, you will also be getting dua books and ziyarat books from Medina and Makkah. You will also get niyat cards. So as Akil Bhai mentioned, but you will have these niyat cards, also niyat cards for the ghusl, you'll do sunnat. So you'll get all this, inshallah. We are just waiting for the musallas and the bags to arrive, and then we'll arrange pickup points. So inshallah, you'll be fully equipped. There is a website. Our website is hajguide.org. Again, it has amazing resources. You can go in, and also the book I mentioned by Dr. Ali Shariat about the whys, it's also a PDF there available. Okay, so if you wanna use that website. Also, many people like to carry phone or iPads. This is the time to start downloading your favorite duas and favorite reciters, etc. And you may be able to listen to them in the Holy Lands. Okay. Yes, Riaz.
Thank you very much. A quick question. Are there any restrictions when it comes to Jamaat Salas?
I think that was also in the slides at the end. So for those who looked at it, so Akil Bhai will cover the difference. Also, Akil can also cover the importance of praying Salat on the plane. There's not an excuse that you just take it easy and not forget your prayer times.
Yeah, so I guess because in the interest of time, we ran out of time, but there are a few slides at the end. So if you look at the slide deck that was sent out yesterday, this covers, this information is covered. So I'll cover both. One is as far as Salatul Jama'ah is concerned inside the Haramain, two things to keep in mind. One is the amount of blessings and reward for praying in the Haram is so significant that don't lose the opportunity of praying every one of your salat or as often as you can inside the Haram, even though it might be a little bit of a walk to get there, right? So take advantage of the opportunity of being in Makkah and Medina. Who knows whether you'll get a chance to be there again or not. So do take the opportunity to spend, to pray in the Haramain. So that's the first point. The second point is as far as restrictions on praying Jama'ah, a congregational prayer in the Haramain, there are 2 points to keep in mind. One is time, and two is the ruling as far as the Imam is concerned, as far as the Shia school of fiqh is concerned. As far as timing is concerned, Maghrib is the where we have the biggest difference. The view of the Ahl Sunnah is that the time of Maghrib sets in at sunset, right? For us, however, the redness in the sky must disappear first, and that takes roughly 15 minutes. And that is why there's a little bit of a difference in terms of our time for Maghrib versus theirs. So for Maghrib Salat, you have to be careful to sort of watch the clock, because by the time they give their adhan, they don't start their Maghrib right away. There's a little bit of a break, right? The people are reciting their sunnah prayers, nawafil prayers, whatever they're reciting, but there's a little bit of a break. As the days get closer and closer to Hajj, that time becomes lesser and lesser because they're rushing to get salat completed in order to get the tawafs and the resuming again. But watch the time. If 15 minutes approximately has not passed from the time of adhan to the time when the imam stands up for prayer, then obviously you stand up and pray, but then you have to pray again, because as far as we're concerned, the time of Maghrib had not set in yet. Okay, the other prayers are not a problem. Then the second part of that question is as far as congregational prayer itself is concerned. The ruling varies based on the marja. The muqalladeen of Agha Khamenei are allowed to pray jama'ah behind the imam. As far as the muqalladeen of Sayyid Sistani are concerned, you pray, but with the niyyah of furada, and you pray on your own, essentially. But you pray shoulder to shoulder with the Muslim ummah, but not with the intention of jama'ah, right? But you have to recite your own surahs. You can recite them softly, but you follow along with the remaining crowd, but not with the intention of jama'ah.
Do you pray, you do the congregation with that?
Yes, yes.
Which is fine.
Yes.
Then do you then recite your own prayer after?
No. You even though the imam is leading the prayers and you're reciting not with the intention of jama'ah, you're praying your fajr salat or your dhuhr salat, but you're just reciting the dhikr on your own and finishing your salat. You don't have to pray again.
Even though the surahs are longer?
Yeah, so this part, obviously there's a difference in terms of our rules of fiqh require us to recite a complete second surah, while from their perspective, even if you recite a passage from the surah, it is sufficient. But for us, we have to recite a full second surah. So now the challenge becomes, if they are reciting a long passage and you decide to recite Surah Kawthar, for example, right? You are done in 15 seconds and he is still reciting. So what do you do? So there are two things you could do. Either you listen to him continuing to recite verses of the Quran, and then when he goes into ruku, then you continue your salat and you go into ruku. Or you can do dhikr, subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. You keep repeating until he finishes the passage that he's reciting, and then you continue on. So the other question was praying in the plane, right? So praying in the plane, again, I believe that's also covered in the slide. So a couple of things there on praying in the plane. One is timing for salat in the air. So timing for salat in the air, you have to keep in mind that the time for salat in the air sets in based on where you're flying. So you ignore the time of your home from where you left, and you don't even worry about where you're heading. The time for salat sets in the air, right? So depending on, I'm not sure which airlines you're planning to take, but if you're flying at night, I don't know, Saudi, you're flying evening flight, okay. So the likelihood is that the time for Fajr will set in the air, right? So you have to check to see what time approximately Fajr is setting in. But if you're flying Saudi, you'll see that the entire plane is going to be stopping for salat, right? So now you have two challenges. One is the timing. So you have to, and there are actually websites that you can say, I forget the exact
trips,
URL, but maybe the organizers can post that on the WhatsApp group. You can put in your flight, where you're leaving, what time you're leaving, where you're heading, and it will tell you approximately what time Fajr sets in. Maybe give it a few, 15, 20 minutes just as a buffer in case there's a calculation difference. And then you have the time for salat. So that's one. Now, as far as direction is concerned, As far as direction is concerned, it also depends on which direction you're flying in. Sometimes you happen to be flying in the direction of Qibla, so it's not a problem. Sometimes if it's a Muslim airline and they're willing to accommodate, I don't know if they would be willing to accommodate an entire flight, standing on the side to pray, which is not practical, obviously. Then if you're flying if they give you the opportunity to pray and like normal, then yes, take advantage of that opportunity and put down your musalla and the prayer mat that you will receive and use that for salat. Otherwise, you can pray. I mean, you ideally do your takbiratul ihram in the direction of Qibla, and then you sit down and you finish your salat in whichever direction the plane is flying. But do pray and not make your salat qada because you happen to be flying. If you're going to arrive at your destination and time for salat will still be there and you're flying in the wrong direction, then yes, then you get off the plane and pray. There's no problem with that. But if there is a concern that your salat will become qada, then pray on the flight. Don't wait until you land.
Okay, there's a question in the ladies. Please on the mic, please. On the mic. Just move the thing to the negatives. Okay.
There are two questions. Assalamu alaikum first. One, in Mina, where are we going to be staying in tents?
In Mina we'll have air-conditioned tents, both in Mina and Arafat.
Okay.
For the ladies, when you pass through Muzdalifah, it's exactly that. You'll pass through and then go straight to Mina. But for the men, they'll sleep out in the open in Muzdalifah. It's actually quite an experience, guys. You'll really enjoy it as long as we can find space.
One more question. My brother from the USA just texted me. He said to ask whether he's also going to get a musalla like that.
Depends. If they behave and they're good, then they can get. Otherwise, no, just kidding. Yes, everybody will get a musalla. Yes. Inshallah. Any more questions? So we have Akil Bhai here. We have Inayat Bhai. Akil. Arif is here as well. Any more questions, or should we end? Okay. So I think yes. Okay. Yeah.
So, Qasr Salat, yeah. So, another good question. Again, it's in the slides at the end. As far as Makkah and Medina are concerned, you will inshallah be staying less than 10 days in both cities. However, you're allowed to pray. You don't have to. You're allowed to pray full in Makkah and Medina, because if you think about where do you pray full? You pray full in your watan, in your home, right? Both Medina and Makkah are considered to be spiritual homes for us, and therefore, and there are a few other places, obviously, but for this, in this context, in Makkah and Medina, whether you pray in the hotel or you pray in the haram, you're allowed to pray full. You don't have to pray full, but you're allowed to pray full. If you're getting thawab for every rakat that you pray, you might as well pray full. And everybody's praying full anyway in Makkah and Medina.
Okay, those are very good questions. Any one more hour? Yes, go ahead. Please on the mic. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers. So, if someone wants to do a niyaba for somebody else, so do they have to go through everything about Umrah, Tawaf Hajj, everything? Thank you.
Yeah. So this is one of those reasons why an hour is not sufficient, because these are the kinds of questions that we tend not to cover in detail. But so two points I will say in response to that question. The first is, if you're performing this Hajj niyabatan for someone else, the first rule is this cannot be your first Hajj. You must have completed your wajib Hajj for you to perform this Hajj niyabatan for someone else. So assume for a moment that you've already completed your wajib hajj, and now you are going back again after a few years, and you want to perform this hajj niyabatan for someone else. So two things. One is you can have as many people on your list for whom you are performing this hajj. There is no restriction. That's number one. Number two, every ritual that we talked about earlier this morning, from the start of Umrah until the end of Hajj, including Tawaf al-Nisa, must be performed for the Hajj to be complete, right? So, one of the questions sometimes people ask to say, well, the restriction on intimacy, for example, with one's spouse, if I am performing the Hajj for someone else, then is that restriction for someone else now because I didn't perform it, for example? No, this restriction is on you. Therefore, it doesn't matter. If you're performing this Hajj niyabatan for a list of individuals, every ritual in Umrah and Hajj tamattu' must be completed.
Okay, Arif, can you tell us about the walking and the physical part which you wanted to do at the beginning? I know we are repeating this from last week's seminar, but believe me, you will appreciate when you are on the ground. Arif, go ahead.
Similar to, I guess, our message to you is very simple. Walk, 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 walk. Lots of walking. And the reason I'm saying this is because people underestimate how much walking needs to be done. And please don't take new shoes or new slippers. Make sure they're broken in. Stuff is, that you're used to using, because it makes a difference. Once you get blisters or things like this, your life becomes very difficult. So, and the heat is extreme, and it's a lot for us because you're going at least 20 degrees up from what we are here when we leave, maybe more depending on the days. So we've seen mid to upper 40s in the last few years. So and you're gonna come out of here and you're gonna be maybe in the teens if you're lucky, right? So it's a huge jump. Keep jackets on when you walk, layer yourself up so your body becomes hardened to moving in those kind of temperatures and working through it. It sounds like it's overkill what Murtaza said last week about slowly increasing your walking count. If you follow his regiment, your Hajj will be a breeze. If you follow part of his regiment, your Hajj will be doable. If you follow nothing of what he said last week, you will struggle. So please, prepare yourself mentally, spiritually, physically, get ready for all of this because it takes a lot. And it's a very unique opportunity that we're having. It's a blessing in so many ways for us to be able to stand in front of the place where we pray towards every single day. And so when we stand there, you want to be able to absorb everything that's happening around you and really maximize your experience, right? This is your connection with your Creator, right? And I think this is you're in a place where you can't get any closer to Him physically. So this is your opportunity to take full advantage of that and talk to Him from your heart as well. Open yourself up. He already knows it. You can't hide anything from Him. But when you talk to Him, you then end up with a sense of relief that comes into you. And what you'll find is that each person will have their own experience, their unique thing that defines their trip. Okay? For me, it's always at the end of the day of Arafat, you'll find that the day itself is extremely hot, and then there's this sort of, I wouldn't call it a cool breeze that comes through the desert, but it's much less intense than what you felt throughout the day. And there's quite a bit of comfort and peace that comes with that. And it's a feeling that a lot of the weight from you has been lifted off. And this is my personal experience, right? So each of you will have your own moment that will define what it is that's going to make your Hajj to be the most important thing for you to take away and then develop and grow from there. This is a starting point again for you, fresh, an opportunity for you to rewrite your own book. And so take that and prepare for it and be ready for it. and understand. And make some of those changes now as you're going through this. And then so when you're doing some of these rituals, they become alive to you. They're not something that you're just performing, right? Bring them into the reality, into what you feel and is important to you. That's it.
That's it. Okay, so Arif had the last word. So thank you again, one more time, for coming all the way in person to Masumin. Inayat Bhai has something.
There's something to do with the ladies, right? Samira Bhai will give every lady this. So
Kobo.
that we know
Kobo,
who
Inayat.
belong to us. There should be a tab on every one of you. So, okay. So what we will do is we'll give this to our ladies, but you'll wear this inside out, like, so this way, this will be outside portion, right? The Hajj assistant will not be showing. Either we do that or we make new ones, which we will decide, right? And we'll give it to all the ladies when you are in Ihram. So we know that this belongs to us, so we know each other, and then we can help each other out, right? So at least somebody wearing this, follow that person. Right?